walk you through another use case that can happen, particularly in regulated industry, right? It's like we have a report, right? And we need to prove exactly where the source data is for a very specific calculation, right? So again, we want to, let's suppose that the calculation come from this table I'm pulling here, and we are looking at career points, right? Somebody's going to say, hey, how do we actually count, or how do we sum? What is career points? Where does it come from? And we have to be able to justify the whole end-to-end logic of how we build it to state regulators. So I can now give a little prompt like this. So I interpret exactly where the source data contributes to this drive metric. Can you generate a lineage report for this specific columns I have there in this model, and press enter. So as you know, in Formula One, we have a budget cap, meaning that, you can't just spend everything in there. So it's not going to go and do a bunch of things for us. It's going to scan the SQL. It's going to understand what's happening in the SQL. It's going to look at the column, and then it's going to start looking at the lineage to truly understand where this data is coming from, looking at the sources of YAML relevant to that. It's actually doing a bunch more thing of what we've seen so far, right? So it's scanning more than one SQL that is related to this specific column I'm looking at. And it's completely going on autopilot, right? It's finding all the relevant context and information that it needed to create this report for me. And now it's going about, okay, let me do a visual diagram. So it's actually generating all these artifacts. And fundamentally, we could just take and analyze and take them to the, to a regulator or anywhere else where we might need this information. So now while this is, it's getting generated, really helping us now in understanding on our project, like where the data is coming from, how it's being transformed, what kind of moving parts and are part of the project, right? So I see, very curious now to see what the output of this generation is. So you can think about also to have this information generated and stored into, let's say, a markdown file inside your own repo as well. So if you want to kind of track and say, hey, this is how this metric has been calculated, this is where it's being generated. It's actually interesting. It's actually doing that for me already. So it's generating all these things for us. And I can click accept now here. And maybe let's try and look at this one, which is our markdown view that we have in Paradime. It's actually give us like an executive summary of this report, which columns were part of it, the descriptions of the column, the linear chain into a memory diagram. Wish I would have, get this inside the chat rendered, but it's available to us. Different step of transformation. What is the actual logic of that metrics in here? And each of the single step documented for us, right? So this is extremely powerful when we have to document, audit some of those critical, critical metrics and definition. So think about a revenue metric or cash balance metric. So anything that it's pretty important that it's truly documented and available for auditor. So we can do this super easy on the fly right away in here. So 100%, yeah. So it's ready fundamentally. Probably we want to add, that who would generate it and few other things. But fundamentally, it gives us everything, so that we can get to that meeting, get to that auditing session with all the artifacts that are needed to justify, why revenue is the number that it shows on all our reports. But totally. I mean, from a product perspective, we've been, of course, thinking about column level lineage as a tool to get to answers, right? And in today's era, answers are written. I should not look at the spaghetti lineage with 150 columns and try to follow with my finger which columns goes where, right? Our point of view from a product perspective is that usually this visualization or those graphs at the column level, they work tendentially very well in devs when you have a few tables, a few columns in there. I think with many of the customers we work with, the reality is that tables have hundreds of columns, and a standard DBT DAG have a series of many tables, and specifically or particularly certain columns, orders like an user column. I think the classic one, everyone has one. That user ID is in many of the table downstream. So how do you make sense of that, right?